I'm bringing up Chou because he claims to be a Christian, and he's been showing off his wedding everywhere. Then Huang Guoluan also talks about his marriage and family testimony. This guy, Chou, talks about his wedding testimony too, and there's a whole wave of con artists or marriage and family frauds in churches all around the world. People are talking about marriage and family testimonies everywhere. Today, I'm going to set the record straight on this issue. Once again, let me tell you two basic facts. First, look, God is not the witness of our weddings, marriages, or families. Christians are witnesses of Jehovah, witnesses of God. At Chou's wedding, he or his pastor said this arrogantly: Jehovah was a witness at our wedding. I don't want to blame Chou. Firstly, he is young, and secondly, he has been deeply poisoned by the mainstream religious church and just follows the crowd. The responsibility is not his. He does not have a good pastor. It's just about young people showing off, saying, my marriage is connected to heaven. But then you go and say that God is the witness of our marriage. That's just too bold. It has something to do with God. We encourage people to hold weddings in church because it is an opportunity to preach the gospel, nothing more. But then you go and say that God is the witness of our marriage. That's just way too bold of you. Let me say it again. We are witnesses of Christ, not the other way around, especially not as witnesses of our marriages. He can't testify to that. There isn't a single marriage out there. No couple, no husband and wife dares to do that. Not a single one has ever pointed to their marriage and family as a testimony to God. He has long pointed to his marriage and family as a witness for God. Not a single one has done that. They are all children of the devil and liars. Why do I say this? Let's go back to the Bible first, and then we'll talk about common sense. Can you find any couple in the Bible that says, we're using our marriage and family to testify for God? If you can find one, I'll take you as my teacher. But you won't find any. And one reason is that God is honest. Second, they knew shame. The first family, Adam and Eve, how did they use their marriage and family to testify for God? They were rebellious children. So these are our ancestors, right? Some people say, can you even go back to Adam and Eve from the early church fathers? Then who is the father of faith? Abraham. Abraham, the father of faith, how could he point to his own marriage and family as a testimony to God? That's just shameful. Look at those two women fighting, That would be Hagar and Sarah. Abraham had some pretty serious conflicts with these two ladies. Sarah. Abraham often had serious conflicts with his two wives. His family and his sons were at loggerheads with each other. How can you shamelessly say that you're using your marriage, family, and relationships with your spouse and kids to testify for God? What gives you the right? Why is it like this? Let me tell you a simple fact. The dominant power that controls marriage, family, husband-wife relationships, and parent-child relationships is definitely not faith or love, but lust, including greed for money, sex, and sex, nothing more. They have long produced dominant power and are highly unstable, with occasional maritime incidents under the flowers and the moonlight. They make promises of eternal love, whisper sweet nothings, and have those romantic moments, but 89% of the time they can't stand each other. Or it's just a cold war, and then a heated battle. How can you point to your marriage and family as a testimony for Christ? There's only one way, by lying. The edge. Next, can we talk about Isaac? God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Where did Isaac fail the most? Both of his sons were liars. Oh, you're using your relationship with your kids to testify for God. Benefit hundreds of families. 2. Of beautiful women. He could only be annoyed and had no way to deal with Esau's marriage to a foreign wife. And Jacob, don't even get me started on him. Jacques went to bed with someone else first, didn't he? He found out that it wasn't the person he loved. Then the two women had a bloody fight, and they took turns beating each other. Just look at that part. It's so good, so funny. You give birth to one, I give birth to one. You give birth to one, I give birth to one, and then I give birth to you, and I give birth to you. And what about the Israelites' 12 sons, right? Not a single one of them is a good egg. A few of those sons even wanted to kill the youngest one. The sect of Judah even slept with their own daughters-in-law as prostitutes. How can you use marriage and family as a testimony? Job, who was almost a contemporary of Job, was a representative figure like the greatest martyr of artists, right? His wife and him were completely torn apart in marriage and faith. When Job was in the most difficult time, his wife said, "You should die." What makes you think you can use your marriage and family to testify for God? I really don't get it. You go parading around the world saying, "Hey, look at our marriage and family." I could spot you as a fraud from a mile away. Can the king of gluttons dare to? Even less so. You all know about David's scandal. What about Solomon? The wisest man in human history, and yet in his later years. The harem is debauched, and the garden is full of flowers. It caused the division of the country. Nothing to say in the New Testament era, how about that? In the New Testament era, you can find apostles, one by one, using their marriages and families to bear witness to Christ. There's no reason. It's simple. They knew shame. Peter's mother-in-law was really sick, and it wasn't just any old illness. That lady had some serious issues. So Peter couldn't handle it anymore and went to find Jesus to heal her. It's that simple. No. In the New Testament, there's not a single apostle who points to their own marriage and family and says, "I will use our marriage and family to testify for Jesus Christ." Let me tell you, there seems to be one example. That's what Peter said about Sarah, that she obeyed her husband just like she obeyed the Lord. But strictly speaking, this is not a personal testimony. This is not Sarah's testimony. It is someone else's testimony. Who is so shameless to talk about myself? Peter can talk about Sarah. Hebrews chapter 11 talks about so many individuals, and it's all others speaking about them. You think it's shameless to stand there and talk about your own. Marriage and family, talk about your wife, talk about your husband, talk about your kids. What gives you the right? The moment you open your mouth, you're already lying. I've told you all before, that moment was just too funny. The two of them were saying completely different things and almost got into a fight in front of everyone. But the wife was smart. She quickly gave her husband a look and said, "Let's talk about this when we get home." So you're from Taiwan, huh? Marriage isn't Jesus' testimony. Marriage helps understanding. The testimony of Jesus Christ. Of course, marriage and family can allow you to get to know each other better, most of all. I think the biggest blessing of marriage and family for us Christians is that no matter how arrogant you might be, as long as you get honest with yourself, you look at the mirror of marriage and family, and you'll genuinely thank God for what the Bible reveals about the greatest truth of humanity, which is love. People are truly sinners. As long as you get honest with yourself and look at the mirror of marriage and family, you'll genuinely thank God for what the Bible reveals about the greatest truth of humanity, which is love. People are truly sinners. Today, let's take a moment to sigh. The biggest sinner is the one who shamelessly turns around and says, "My marriage and family are part of Christ's journey." Oh, and not only that, jealousy is also a testimony of my marriage and family. Jesus clearly said, "I don't know you. I'm not here to deal with your family matters." So let's sum it up. Why did Jesus only send out 2 blind men? To go around talking nonsense for 3 miles. For that, we thank God.